This is part 2 of our lesson on solving for angles using the sine, cos, and tan ratio. So the question does say solve for x in each of the following, and we're going to move on to our second example. So once again, we have a right angle triangle. I can tell because of the square in the corner, and I have two labeled sides, and we're trying to find an angle. Because I'm trying to find an angle, I am not going to use Pythagorean theorem, but I could use sine, cos, or tan depending on the combination of sides that I have. So the first thing I should do is label to figure out what we're working with. So the hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle, the longest side in the triangle. So this side is the hypotenuse. And then to label the other two sides, you need to identify the angle in your question that you either have or want to find, which is this angle right here. So across from this angle is my opposite side, and then the other side is the adjacent side. Adjacent means beside, so it's the one beside the x. So I like to look at those sides and see if there's one that I don't know anything about or need to find. And that in this case would be the adjacent. It's not labeled with any numbers or variables, so I think the adjacent is the one that we're going to cross out, which leaves me with my opposite and hypotenuse. So I like to use the word SOHCAHTOA to help remind me about the ratios. So I have opposite, that's O, and I have hypotenuse, that's H. So I'm looking for something with an O and an H, which is the SO of SOHCAHTOA, which means we are going to be using sine. So sine of angle A equals O opposite over H hypotenuse. From here, I'm going to take the information from the triangle and substitute it in. So my opposite, we'll start with A. So A is the angle, that's x. So I have sine of x equals opposite. So that would be 95 divided by hypotenuse, which is 200. Now, I am not going to cross multiply, and that's because the x is not part of the fraction. The x is currently with the sign. So cross multiplying isn't really going to help me here. What I want to do instead is find a way to cancel out that sign. So I'm going to do the opposite operation of a sine, which is an inverse sine. So I'm going to take the inverse sine, it looks like a sine -1, of both sides. So that means that x is going to equal the inverse sine of 95 over 200. Now I put it in a bracket because if you have a calculator where you see the word sine show up on the screen, you need that bracket in order to make that work. And it also shows that we are taking the inverse sine of the whole thing and not just one of the numbers. So if you have a calculator where you see what you type in, then just type in what you see. You would do second sine or shift sine depending on what you have on your calculator, and then bracket 95 divided by 200. If you're having trouble finding your bracket keys, they are often in a couple of different places. They could be here above your multiplication and division. Sometimes they're up here just above the 8 and the 9. Sometimes if you have like one of those circles, it's on the left and right side of the circles on your calculator. Okay, so I don't have one where I see what I type in on the screen, so I have to do this part first. So I'm going to do 95 divided by 200, and then I'm going to hit equals, and then I'm going to do second and sine. And I get 28 point, I want two decimal places, so that would be 35. I'm going to take a peek at the next number, which is a 9, so that's going to round that up to 36. So it is 28.36. The sides are in centimeters, but this is an angle, so that's going to be degrees. So our final answer is 28.36 degrees. You can join me in the last video to see that last example.